All right, we're going to take a step back and look at something. You might have seen this when I initially posted the art, but since we haven't spoken about it, let's talk about Wasteland. Wasteland, Erase and Abandon is my attempt at touching on environmental concepts. I wanted to see what I could do prior to the actual study and during the first phase. Realistically, for Wasteland, we're looking at 3 phases of art here. Each phase is going to have some level of study before we've completed it. It's essentially going to be 3 solid studies, all in its own. I'm actually preparing for phase 2 of it right now, but I figured since I'm done with phase 1, I could show you guys what I was able to get out of this. So I wrote the initial Wasteland script almost a year ago, and realistically most of the things I expressed there were along the same lines, but I've kind of gone through it again and decided to restructure it. This is especially necessary with the change in how I'm presenting these explorations now. I'm really just grabbing the points that I had initially and making sure that I'm giving some fresh eyes to my perspective of it. It gives me an opportunity to be more introspective. To be honest, the actual study was much shorter than the 40 to 50 hour push that I'm usually doing when I go through these, but I kind of wanted to see how quickly I could implement this, and there are actually more full pieces of art that are kind of making up for big portions of it. Even then, it was only after I got to a certain point in the other art pieces that I knew for a fact I was going to be putting a whole lot more work into this. It was going to be a way bigger study than usual. The normal process for any of my studies has me start with like a quick test. Then I do an assessment of the subject. So like that's usually the tracing phase where I'm trying to figure that out. And then afterwards I'm in the reference pool, recreating everything. And finally the drill, where I'm just pulling from the mental library, seeing what I retain. And that would eventually lead me to doing a full piece of art. This is not how this study went for Wasteland at all. I actually think this is going to have its own process that I'm going to kind of document down, because I can see myself pushing a few multi-phase studies like this in the future. Instead of the usual study method, I dived into the next part right away. I created my first and probably favorite of the pieces, which is Daybreak. There is a story behind all of this, but it's really just a vehicle for me to showcase the art. Thematically, it's all tied together, but this was the first and I really enjoyed it. Do I think it's the best out of all of them? Probably. It's definitely the most authentic though. Initially, when I planned to do these videos, I planned to talk about the art story, but canonical is not always chronological. That's especially the case when it comes to an art story. Sometimes the idea for the ending or the middle is the first thought. I think it's better that I go through these in the direction that I painted them, because there are things about my mindset here that matter. So I was inspired by a photo of some trees. I saw initially what I wanted to do, which was just, achieve this kind of brooding feeling from these trees, just a little bit of them. There was no big plan, no story, or even an idea to make like a full piece out of this. I was really just playing around and wanted to draw some trees. This is truly a piece of art that developed itself. I started drawing with a reference photo, got the shapes down, and I was like, okay, that's cool. As I continued to try and get more shapes in and get more things done, I eventually got all the trees placed. Immediately after, everything changed. I started rendering, and as time went on, the mission changed. This was an example of what I pointed out before, intention. If you haven't seen that, here is a playlist so you can get caught up. But, side note, this is the other side of the coin to what I was talking about before during the chill light experiment. It's perfectly fine to show up without a plan. Oftentimes, that's how something ends up surprising you. Not everything has to be perfectly regimented. If that was your intent from the start, then cool, stick with that. But if you just want to sit down and do a sketch, do it. If it turns out to be something greater than that, enjoy it. You're letting your creativity free with this, and a lot of times if you're working on something like a bigger project, doing anything akin to this will free you from those constraints. This is actually why I did the draw and chill video art. It was another break away from, the more focused work I was doing. You never know what you're really gonna get out of this stuff, because the draw and chill art has taken its own concept, like it's become its own thing. So I'm planning more draw and chill pieces right now. If you have a vision, stick to that. Be disciplined, but don't be afraid to give yourself a bit of space and freedom. So when I posted Daybreak, I was complimented on it here and there by a few people. Some people commented, others reached out directly. I think it's because of how authentic this piece was. What I thought was really cool about this was that the scene came from me. Like, sure, I had a reference with the trees, but the entirety of it, after just seeing the trees and everything, making a little bit of detail, it all came from this pure inspiration in me. The water and the foliage, everything. None of that stuff was there in the reference photo. I'll put that up somewhere, or you guys will see it at least when I start. This was back when I was popping reference photos into my Procreate instead of having the reference window. Yeah, it was kind of weird. We'll talk more about the story of Wasteland, Erased and Abandoned some other time, but there is predominantly more to explore here in like the visuals. There might be 2 or 3 more pieces of art beyond these, I think. And we're gonna see if they fit really well. If you haven't seen the different posts, each art piece is called a scar. So they all have a specific order. There's the 1st through the 4th. Daybreak is the 2nd scar. It's what happens after chaos. Stillness before revival. Imagine a beautiful landscape. There's trees everywhere. Imagine there is some type of tragedy. Anything that, really just takes away from that life. It is sad. One of those situations that would bring forth negative feelings. But I feel like there's beauty in those spaces. As life begins to return, as we start seeing the semblances of things going on. That was part of what I wanted to showcase within this project. A lot of times something like this can be an experience or a feeling. I honestly think when I created Daybreak, that's where this came from. I had an experience around that time that, had led me to produce something like this. I felt like I was coming back from the worst of a situation. And I think this was a specific time during the beginning of my healing journey. Daybreak is personal to me. All my art is personal in some way, but this one is specifically something that hits home in a place that I didn't know I could illustrate from. As time went on, the details just evolved. I was really happy to implement the complementary color scheme. The orange and blue motif is, I don't want to say easy, in the sense that it takes no effort, because that doesn't make sense, but it's easily recognizable. Let's go with that. I think that fits what I'm trying to say better. It pops out and we love it. I love how the warm and cool tones are able to access certain crevices. I love how I was able to, put those cool tones into shadows. The rest of the study would not exist if I had not experienced creating Daybreak. One of these days, we'll talk about the exact direction that all of my art is, inspired itself from. Because if you guys didn't know, my art has a particular start point. Like, yes, I've been drawing for decades, but these pieces lately have a start. Initially, the water was not a part of this at all. I didn't think about having the little river or stream or whatever you want to call this, but somehow it pulled itself into the piece. I think because of the fact that there was black space in the middle and I felt like something needed to be there, I eventually started to just place colors there and things just popped up. It became whatever it needed to. Sometimes there is just a feeling of what's missing, and that comes through observation, studies, and a lot of different things actually. Side note, so we talk about building the mental library a lot because that's a key skill. As an artist, you need to be able to observe different things. I'm not the only one who brings this stuff up. If you're watching any other artists on YouTube, all of us are talking about how you study, how you learn, and how you get certain things in your head. You can't just draw from thought or from memory. It doesn't really work like that. I mean, it does eventually, but not at first. I've said before, that when people tell you, oh, you're not a real artist because you needed a reference, or you're not a real artist because you need to trace to know how to do it for the first time, or whatever, any of those dumb things that they say, they fundamentally don't understand how to learn art. Initially, when you're studying, you have to trace and you have to have a reference. That's really how all that works. It's just how it works in general. All the old masters did stuff like this in their own way. You don't just know things from day one. You have to go out and you have to search for these different spaces and figure things out. That's kind of why I like to get my references from photos that I take myself now. I will walk into a space that inspires me, and maybe I feel like a little bit of inspiration based on the location or something like that. Maybe, I don't know, I'll see something small, something specific that'll capture me, and that'll in turn lead me to being able to capture details that I never would have caught before. Maybe you'll check out a location and you'll see that there are ripples in water, or you'll see foliage leaning in a certain way because the wind's blowing. Something like that. See it enough, and it'll eventually fill the gaps in your mind when you're drawing, sketching, or painting. Like I said, I'll often take pictures of my environment and I'll use those as my references. That's not what happened with the tree picture. That's what happens other times, like where I'll pull a reference from the internet. That picture fit. I don't know what it was, it spoke to me. But I have to go for things that will, give the right energy. Either way, you don't learn these things from just pulling it from your head. You have to either observe or trace it before you actually implement it somewhere. It has to be during like a study phase or something. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to, but then it depends on what your definition of study phase is. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Tracing is not wrong as long as you are using it to study, to learn, and not implementing it in something that you ultimately want to call your art. Sometimes when creating a piece of art, you need to just do one thing and let the rest of it evolve. That's how this came about. Don't put too many expectations on yourself. Sometimes it's easier to just live in that experience and live in that moment as you build the art. It will undoubtedly at certain times be frustrating, but as long as you lower those expectations for yourself, you will eventually create something that you are proud of, and it will surprise you. Well, guys, I have finally been able to talk about Wasteland, and specifically my favorite piece from Wasteland, The Second Scar. I love Daybreak, and I just talked incessantly about it the entirety of this. Wasteland and the way that it's structured is going to be pretty big. I have ideas for the second phase, and they're only going to grow for phase 3. For now, I do want to just let this sit with you guys, let you guys, observe Daybreak and everything. Many of you have probably already seen it because you might have seen it on my IG, or seen that it's the only thing that I've posted on Kara. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed getting the insight on it and finding out that, yeah, Daybreak was the first thing that I drew for this study. The way that I posted it on Instagram, you might not have even caught that. But hey, like I said, a lot of this stuff, the story and everything, is just a vehicle for me to explain. Either way, if you like Daybreak and everything, if you're enjoying the art and stuff, hit that like and subscribe, and let me know. Explain some things to me. Tell me what you're enjoying seeing. With that being said, I will see you soon.